Hello, everybody. Welcome in, welcome in. We'll get started in a couple of minutes here. We're just waiting on some people to filter in. My name is Vlad. I'm a developer relations manager here at Acumatica. And today I'm joined by Varthini, Vignesh, and Kate from Acumatica. Very exciting things here. And they'll be talking about the modern UI at Acumatica. So we'll get started in about 60 seconds here. This meeting is being recorded, so once this webinar is over and we'll edit it, make it look nice and pretty, we'll share it on the community for people to watch it, just in case you missed it today or have some further insights you want to check back on. Oh. What day is it? Tuesday? Terrific Tuesday. All right, hey, it's a minute past the hour. Let's get started. Again, my name is Vlad, Developer Relations Manager here at Acumatica. I'm joined today by Varthini, Vignesh, and Kate from Acumatica. And today they're going to be talking about the modern UI. It's been one of our most requested topics in our developer community. And I'll just be here to support in the background. But two very important things very quickly. Number one, depending on your organization, if you use Office 365, you may or may not have access to the Q&A window. It really depends how your system administrator gives you permissions for everything. So if you don't have access to the Q&A window, it's okay. You can try using the chat window as well, and we'll try to filter them in as best as possible. And also, this is going to be recorded. So once it's edited and we're all done with the webinar, we'll post it on the community for people to see. So with that, please, Varthini, Vignesh, and Kate, take it away. I'll be in the background here to support. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Vlad, and thank you everyone for joining. I welcome you all again. Without further ado, let's move on to the agenda. Just give me a second. Yeah, let's move on to the agenda. So thank you for the introductions, Vlad. So for today, we'll be looking at modern UI, getting familiar with modern UI. Next, we'll be looking at quick migration tools. And then Vignesh will walk us through the customization, reusable components, troubleshooting tips and tricks, and we'll have time for Q&A, I hope. So since modern UI is pretty new, we have covered from simple or basics of modern UI to complex functionalities. I hope it suits everybody in the audience. Now let's move on to getting familiar with modern UI. For that, let's see how to toggle between modern UI and classic UI in a screen in Acumatica. If you have watched any of the keynote sessions in the last 2 years, you might be familiar with this. So please bear with me while I do a quick recap. So to toggle between modern UI and classic UI can be done on the screen using the Tools Switch to Modern UI button. This can also be done on the sitemap screen, where you'll be able to switch all the screens or any particular screen as well. Now let's go back to the screen, give it a minute for the modern UI to load. Yeah, this is the look and feel of modern UI. Let's see how to start coding in modern UI using the JavaScript framework or Aurelia framework, and also use our tool to quickly migrate existing custom screens to modern UI. So in order to launch an instance with modern UI, we have to launch that using the Acumatica configuration wizard. So when you're launching the instance, so I've created the CC demo instance. While creating the instance, I enabled modern UI when I'm launching this using the configuration wizard by clicking on Enable Modern UI. This also allows us this configuration wizard also allows us to install the relevant Node.js version needed for the site. I'm using a 25R1 version, and the relevant Node.js version will be installed when we are launching this instance itself. The second setting needed to create an instance with modern UI is on the web.config file. You can find the web.config file on our instance folder, and let's open that. So here we have to ensure this enable sitemap switch UI property is set to true. This is set to true by default, but we have to ensure that. In addition to this, I want to highlight that the Node.js version required for our instance is also available here. And the Node.js path and the cache path is also there. You can modify it if you need it. I'm using a 25R1 version of Acumatica, and it requires Node 2211.0 version. If you're using 24R2, then the Node.js version might be different. For example, on a 24R2 version, the Node.js version is 18.12.1. So this is where NVM comes into picture. So if you want to work on multiple versions of Acumatica on modern UI, you can use NVM, which is Node Version Manager, which allows you to toggle between different Node versions when you're working on different instances of Acumatica. Now we saw how to launch an instance with modern UI, how to toggle between classic and modern UI in Acumatica, and also the basic setup required to launch the instance. Now let's move on to file structure and IDE. Where is all the code needed for modern UI? It is present inside the front-end resources folder. This folder is again in our instance folder on the same folder as our web.config. So you can find all the code related to modern UI here. And we'll need an IDE to open these files. The IDE I would recommend is Visual Studio Code, because the first thing is it is more suited for JavaScript framework. And the second is it does have Copilot, which allows us to develop faster and efficiently. So now inside front-end resources, we can see there are multiple folders and files. The first thing I want to highlight is the screen folder, which contains all the files under SRC folder under screens again, all the files for each of these modules. For example, AM, CS, all these modules. Let's open a common screen that we use, sales order, which is SO301000. Here we can see the file structure is there is a screen ID.html and then a screen ID.ts file or the TypeScript file. In addition to that, it also contains some extensions which Vignesh will cover in a few minutes. So in order to start developing, we will first need the node modules or dependencies. To install these node modules, we'll have to run a command. It is npm run get modules, where you can find these commands on our help articles or T290 course. You can also find this on the package.json file. So on the package.json file, you can find under script section, you can find the different scripts that are needed, like build dev, get node modules, etc., etc. So the first time you try to get the dependencies, it might take a minute. I've already run it, so it'll be a bit faster. So while this runs, let's go through the file structure once more. So the front-end resources under screen, under source, under screens again, we do have all the modules that are there. And under each module, we do have specific screens, and each of these screens, for it to work, needs a .html and .ts files. So let the dependencies get installed. We'll see how to quickly migrate an existing custom screen to modern UI. For that, let's go to our instance. And if you're familiar with the T courses, you might be familiar with the phone repair shop functionalities. Let's go for the repair work order preferences screen, which is the simplest screen to migrate here. So now if we try to switch this screen to modern UI, the system will throw an error that this screen is not available for modern UI yet. Let's give it a minute so that we see that error. Let's refresh this again. So I hope the setup part was clear using Node.js and the code inside front-end resources. And also the command used to run to get all the node modules or dependencies. Now our node modules is installed and we can find the node modules folder with all the dependencies. I hope the screen is refreshed. Let's give it another minute. Sorry about this, people. It's a little slow. Yeah. Now you can see the error that comes up that this repair work order preferences form cannot be switched to modern UI because it is not supported yet. Now let's quickly migrate the screen to modern UI. This is extremely simple. All you have to do is click on customizations and click on convert to modern UI. By clicking on this file, the files needed for this screen to come up will be generated and it will be available for you to utilize. So this tool or this migration is already built into Acumatica and it's available. Let's open this folder. And inside this folder, you can see there is a HTML file, TS file, and a views.ts file as well. We can extract this since this is in zip file. And we can then copy this contents to our front-end resources folder. We can also modify the way this converter behaves to a certain level. For example, we do have a screen converter tag in our web.config file, which will allow us to specify whether the file should be downloaded or not. And we can also, if it is false, we can also specify whether the screen, what is the output folder the file should be copied to. And also, and most importantly, we can specify the way the fields are named on the generated files. That is, using of px join syntax enabled, we can tell the system on how to name the different fields that are on the screen. Also, please note, when you're using this migration tool, any existing JavaScript logic that you have in your AXPX code will not be converted. That have to be manually added. Now let's see how to utilize this HTML and TypeScript files that are generated for our RS101000 screen. Let's go back to our Visual Studio Code. Similar to the different modules, let's create one RS module. New folder, RS. And under this folder, let's create a folder for our screen, that is RS101000. So we have our folder for the screen. Now let's copy all the three files that are generated into our so our HTML file, TS file, and view.ts file is copied into our RS101000 folder. Now let's review the code that was generated for us. First is the HTML. You can see it is a simple screen with just 4 fields, which is set inside a QP field set, which is a WG container, or which creates the panel for our modern UI. You can also see the view that is bound to this panel, which is setup. We'll see where this setup is defined in our TypeScript file. Lastly, all these should be enclosed within a template tag. Now let's look at how to create these views, which are two-way bound between our TypeScript and HTML files. So on the TypeScript, that is rs101000.ts, we can see there are multiple imports in addition to the views. Here, I'd like to highlight two major classes that are required for any modern UI screen within Acumatica. That first is a screen class. You can identify a screen class when there is a class with the screen name which extends from px screen. This screen class also has a decorator called graph_info. There are multiple decorators in modern UI which you can look for in help. I'll highlight the most important ones. One of the most important ones is the graph_info, which tells what is the graph that we have. This RSSV setup main is the graph name of the screen RS or work order preferences screen. This we can find on our source code. This we can find on our source code. In addition to the graph details, it also tells us what is the primary view for the screen. So here we have a view called RSSV setup, which is created using create single and using the class or using the view class. Again, the second class that is most important is the view class, which you can identify by the class which extends from pxView. This is a simple screen with a single view. So we are just using this RSSV setup view. In addition to that, for all the 4 different fields, we can have different control config. This allows us to define the way the UI should be displayed, or for example, display mode is text here for the default employee field. In addition to this, you can find different settings which allows us to set values that you can find on our no code tool. So it is easy to understand all these control configs. Now we have our HTML, TypeScript, and also the view. Let's build this screen and see how it gets displayed in our instance. So the build command here is npm run build dev 3 hyphens -env screen id rs101000. So I want to build only this particular screen. You also have the option of building the entire front-end resources or any one particular module or group of modules. But right now I'm building only for rs101000 screen. Let's build this. While the screen is getting built, let's review some of the other decorators that are there. So we saw there are two classes, screen class, view class. And this view is bound to our HTML. Now let's see how to create a grid. For that, let's review from sales order screen itself. Let's go into SO301000 screen. So this is the HTML for our SO301000 screen or sales order screen. From the TS file, we can see there are different views created. On our sample screen, there was only one view with just 4 fields, but here we can see there are multiple views in order to utilize all the views that we have on our graph. For example, here for SO order header, we are creating using create single, and we have the view info decorator, which tells us the container name, which is order summary. We can also navigate to the view class of SO header, which tells us the different field states and it all where we can set field properties like commit changes, etc., etc. You can find more details from the help articles. Now let's go back. So this is for a simple view. If we do have to create a grid, for example, SO detail line, we have to create a collection for that. And here on SO detail or SO line, we can see the SO line class has add grid config, another decorator, which allows us to define different settings for the grid. The first and the most important one is the preset. You can navigate to the preset. For example, here this is a detail grid. So it is set to detail. You can navigate to the details and you can also see that there are multiple presets available like primary, inquiry, processing, read-only, details, and even an empty one. Let's go back. It also has different settings like allow drag rows, etc., etc. And if it is a simple view, we might not need grid specific decorators. For example, here under SO line, we need grid specific decorator, which is a column config. Here we can define the column properties of different columns within the grid. For example, here for availability, we are defining column config and setting the visible property to false. And there is a toggle option and there are multiple other column config properties you can use. Now that our rs101000 screen is built, let's go back to the instance and see how we can switch to modern UI. Let's refresh this. Now let's switch to modern UI. So now our simple preferences screen is converted to modern UI. So as you see here, the look and feel have to be modified. The layout has to be modified to make it more user friendly. But this is a very good starting point to convert existing screens to modern UI, or at least during the initial phases of development. Now let's try to add a new field within this RS101000 screen. I have created a USR test field, and this code is built and already deployed on our instance. Let's try to add this USR test field into our preferences screen. Let's go back to the instance, go back to our RS101000. Under view, let's create this field, USR test. Let's save this. And in our HTML, let's add this USR test field. Now let's build this. I hope it is clear. When we add a new field, we have to add that to the view class. And based on this view, we are creating a view within our screen class, and it is bound to our HTML. And the field is displayed within the whichever panel we want. Yeah, now the screen is built. Let's go back to our instance, refresh the screen. Yeah, now we can see our USR test field. This is a simple example of getting started with UI, and I hope people who are new to UI found this helpful. Now let's do a quick recap. So first, we did see how to switch between classic and modern UI. It can be done on the screen and on the sitemap. And Kate, do you have any inputs on this? Any common mistakes or anything that people should know about?
Oh, yes, Varthini, thank you very much. So I just wanted to add that, like, as you have seen, when you try to switch to modern UI in a form that does not exist, like for which the mapping does not exist, you just get an error. So don't worry, nothing will break. And you can switch screens individually and migrate them individually. So you don't need to have mapping for all screens to modern UI in order to be able to switch on the sitemap form or on the screen itself. So take your time, migrate the screens one by one, and just like you can switch to modern UI on the sitemap form, and all of the screens that have modern UI mapping will be switched. And in case some of them don't have the mapping, they will just stay the same. There was also a question, I remember sometime, that whether we can create new screens on the modern UI without any classic UI mapping. I mean, like, what if we can create new screens without creating them in the classic UI, not like to save time? So I think the answer is yes. You can have modern UI screens without any correspondence in the classic UI.
Thank you, Kate. Next, I would like to highlight some of the common commands for modern UI. First is build, and also please note we have to install dependencies using npm run get modules. And and Kate, is there any difference between the build commands for different versions of Acumatica?
Yes, so you need to keep in mind that if you are using different versions of Node.js, the build commands might be different. So for 2025 for R2, the build command npm run build dev contains double dashes, not triple dashes. So just keep in mind if you are building code for 2024 R2, double dashes, and for 2025 R1, triple dashes. For 2025 R2, as far as I remember, the build comment stays the same. The only difference might be is that the screen IDs are, like, if you're specifying multiple screen IDs, the syntax will be a little bit different for 25 R2, but still, you'll see all this information in our release notes and our help, so don't worry.
Thank you, Kate, for highlighting that. This is one of a very minor thing, but it throws a lot of issues.
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
Yeah, so some of the common comments, I hope this is clear. Next, the file structure. The major code base is in our front-end resources screen, and we have individual modules, which each screen containing its own HTML and TS file or TypeScript file. This allows us to have the MVVM design pattern, and also we have different decorators, graph info, control config, etc. We also saw about screen class and the view class. Next.
Oh, sorry, Varthini, I just wanted to add something.
Sure.
So yeah, just keep in mind, so one of the very common mistakes when creating new screens, migrating screens to the modern UI, is that people keep the same structure of files as they did in classic UI. When we had all of the screens in the module folder, so let's say we had a like sales order SO folder, and all of the screens ASPX files were in the single SO folder. Now the structure is a little bit more complex. So for every screen, you also have to need to have an individual folder. And don't forget to create that one. So here, for example, on the screenshot, you can see that for each screen, for RS 10.10.00, for us screen RS 20.10.00, we have a separate folder. And don't forget to create those HTML and TS files in the folder. And another thing that you need to remember is that if you are looking through the source code of Acumatica screens, for many of the screens, you might see the extensions folder inside the screen folder and the views TS file. So Varthini has already told us about the views TS file where we can store the screen classes. It is so according to our internal conventions, usually if we have more than 2 or 3 view screen classes, we put them in a separate views TS file just to organize the code. So yeah, if you're searching for the view classes, keep in mind that they might be in the views TS file. And regarding extensions, so in the extensions folder, we usually store the extensions of the screens, some additional functionality, descriptions of dialog boxes, and so on.
Thank you, Kate. Reviewing the existing code also helps in when we start developing. Yeah, now let's go back to our presentation. So I hope the file structure was clear. Next, we did see about NVM, which allows us to toggle between different versions of Acumatica. And there are some common terms in UI, especially the decorators, fields, field sets, field state, etc. I hope everybody goes through the T290 course or get their hands dirty with the code base so you get familiar with all these. And Kate, do you have any information about any of these decorators or screen or view class?
So yeah, the modern UI introduces a lot of new terms, and it may be hard to understand all of those and remember what all of those means. So I strongly recommend for you to look through our help, which has a very extensive information on different modern UI terminology and ideas and the rules and reference of elements and so on. I think I will show you how our help resources look at the end of this session. So another thing that we mentioned was a preset. So a preset is a very important thing that we strongly recommend for you to use, because like when you specify a preset, it covers a huge amount of like dozens and dozens of properties that a grid could have. And so it saves a lot of time for you. Like, you don't need to remember what you need to specify for a grid. You just specify a preset. And it also helps us to have the unified style across all Acumatica forms for the grids. So each preset is intended for each specific type of grid. For example, a grid on a data entry form, or a grid on the processing form, or a grid on the in a dialog box. So every one of those grids have different set of properties. Like, they may be editable or not. They may be they may have toolbar or not. They may have certain buttons on the toolbar. They may have filters or not. So all a single preset covers all of those settings, and if you specify a preset, the grid will have the look and feel that is intended for that particular purpose of this grid. So yeah, again, all of those terms are covered in our documentation very extensively, and I strongly recommend you to look through all those topics in case you have any questions. And I've seen a good question in the chat regarding the SaaS instances. So how do you change the version of Node.js in SaaS instances? When the SaaS team deploys an update on your instance, the proper Node.js version is deployed automatically, so you don't need to change it manually. And yes, I think that's all. Oh, by the way, another thing. So since you are showing the presets page, you see there's some documentation here for the presets. You can also see this documentation when you hover over an element in the in source code. And this is one of the advantages of VS Code. So why we need to use VS Code for coding in modern UI is because, first of all, it's much faster than Visual Studio. And secondly, because our help resources, our annotations are visible only in VS Code. Yeah, here you see the description of the presets, or the description of the grid config decorator, and you'll be able to see all of those annotations only in VS Code.
So to navigate, you can just press on Control and click on those fields. It will navigate to the grid preset
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. Yeah, next, let's go back to our presentation. So these are the common terms, and next is a quick migration tool, which is a very good starting point. But after migrating, or once you get comfortable, you might not need it much. Yeah. And with that, I would like to hand off to Vignesh, who is going to take care of reusable components, customizations, and tips and tricks.
So hi everyone. Okay, let's start sharing my screen. Okay, so before we talk about an example, let's quickly run through a few important advantages of the modern UI. Firstly, we have the templates and the presentation logic that do support per tenant customization. So each HTML and CSS or the presentation logic will be rendered based on the tenant that you are working from. And this front-end modern UI supports event-driven client-side programming, which is very similar to the server-side model. So you can program, you have more control over the UI elements, and you can render them and color them or do any customizations based on the requirements. And we do support 48 column layout, which makes the UI more adaptive for different screen sizes, and just also again makes it more customizable. The existing DAC and graph does not require any modification, so most likely don't need to make any changes there for the modern UI to work with it. And as Varthini mentioned, these screens can be migrated altogether or individually or as per module, depending on your convenience. And troubleshooting is more easier when it using all the built-in browser tools, which we'll be also seeing shortly. So now for this part of the presentation, let's do a small customization to see to discuss how we can build a reusable HTML template, right? So main advantages of using the reusable HTML template is it can be used across different screens, and it makes the code maintainable, and you don't have to like type each screens, type the customization for each screen. So once you have the template, you can modify the changes in the template, and it should reflect on all the screen. And once the HTML template is ready, let's see how we can include the template in the existing screen. So how to extend the existing HTML template, we'll see that. And we'll also see how to create a TypeScript extension of an existing screen. Okay, for this example, to demo this, I have already created a custom field. Let me show it quickly. So I have created a custom field in the sales order screen, which is called user additional reference number, and I have created the same field in the shipment number, shipment screen. Let's say we wanted to build this, show this field in both the screens. So let's see how we can create a simple HTML template and use it to implement this requirement. Okay, so to do this, let's start by creating an HTML template. So this, we can start by creating the template in the common folder. Okay, before that, let me explain. So I'm using Visual Studio here. So as Varthini explained the structure, all the front-end source code is available in the front-end sources folder and in the SRC. So, and within the screens, you can see each modules. So here we are working with the sales order module. So let's go to the SO, and I will create a folder in the under the common folder. And let me name it. Okay, so once I created a folder, let me start by creating a HTML file. Okay, now to create a template, I'll start by defining the template. So in this template, I should be able to, I need to pass the name of the field. So I'll be using the QP parameter. Sorry, give me a second. I'll be using QP include parameters tag. In here, I need to pass the field name. So I'll name it as field name, and it is a required parameter to use the specific template. So now I need to display this field. To display the field, I can start by typing the tag. Okay, not field set, I should be using field. And for the name, I should be using it from the parameters. So to do that, I can use the field name that I can define here. So when you are using it in HTML extension, you need to pass it, and that will be replaced here to render this specific element. So let me say I need to use a caption. So which also I will be defining it here directly. Let's say I will do it as field caption. Instead of passing it, I'm going to hard code it, say for example, test cap. And I'm going to use field caption parameter here. So that's it. So now we have a very simple like HTML template. So we are using QP include parameters to define the parameters that are required and to set the parameters. And we are using those parameters here in the field element. Okay, now let's go to the sales order screen. Let's say we wanted to display this field in the first column here in the header, right in here. So to do that, let's create a TypeScript file first. So as we can see, let's open the sales order. Let's see. So there are different extensions here, and this is the HTML file of the sales order and the TypeScript file of the sales order screen. So we already have a DAC, which we already created in the customization project. Now let's create a TypeScript file to expose this custom field to the front end. To do that, let's start adding a new item. Let's say SO3010 extension dot ts. Okay, now we have there. I think I did add one. Just rename it. Okay, so I have created an extension. So now let's import few basic stuff. So since we are working with field, we'll import px field state here from client controls. And you can also do some research in the existing TypeScript, right? So this is a TypeScript. So let's see, we wanted to place the field after the customer reference number. As you can see, customer reference number is part of the class that extends a px view, SO order header. So let's create an interface for this SO order header here. Export is I'm going to name it 30 extension extends SO order header. I think we need to import it. So let's let the IDE do its part. Now let's import this interface. Sorry. So now we are implementing it. So let's go to the DAC definition. Just give me a second. So I just need the field name so I can expose it to the UI. So I'm going to use the name of it. And for here, I'm going to use the px field state. So this field will be exposed to the front end. So now this is done. So now we have the field. Now we have the field exposed to the front end. So now what we can do. So the next step is to create an HTML extension of this of the SO3010. In there, we can use this template and render it in the front end. So to do that, so let's again create another HTML file, which will be of type HTML. Okay, so now we'll have this here. So let's start editing the template. Let's use template. So in here, as we discussed already, so we need to place this field in the first column. So let's find the ID of the first column. To do that, let's open the existing HTML. So as we can see, this is the header section. So there are 3 columns, FS column A order, and B order and C order. As we can see in the FS column, A order. So these are the fields, right? Order number. So this is the first column. So let's use the ID of this so we can modify that specific template. And if we remember, we had a parameter there. This is the parameter that needs to be, that's a required parameter, right? The field name. So let's pass it here. So here the parameter is the field name that we just exposed in the TypeScript. So So we already have the field name, so that will be the ID of this field. So we're just gonna pass that on. Here. So now this is done. So these are the changes, right? So now we have three different files. One is the template, where we have created the like a field, where we are creating a field, and we have an TypeScript extension of the screen where we are exposing the field, custom field that we have created. And we are also having the HTML extension where we are editing the existing screen template, right? Okay, sorry, I have a typo. I have a mistake here. I need to use QP include. The QP include should have a parameter. Sorry, it's my mistake. And in the QP include, I also need to mention the URL of the template, which is so it's a part of the template where it is. Okay. Closing that. Okay. All right. Sorry for the confusion. So this is template is modifying the column A, and it is using the QP include tag to pass these parameter to the template here. And this is nothing but the path of the template. So it's in the comment, and this is the name of the template. Okay, now let's build this. To build this, let's open the terminal from the front end source. You can go to Visual Studio and start by doing this. Open in terminal, and you can see the terminal is opened in the front end sources folder. To build it, you can use npm run build, and you can use a screen ID to target and build a specific screen. Let's do it. It's going to take a couple of minutes. So once this is rendered without any error, you should be able to see the custom field here. So we will not see this in the sales order in the shipment screen yet, because we haven't made these changes to the shipment screen yet. So after this is done, I already have an extension. I can show you quickly by changing it. Okay, so the build is successful without any errors. Now let's see. I think it's not showing up. Maybe I did make some mistake. Let me see. Include. Oh, I missed the folder name. Sorry. Okay, let me run it quickly again. So the first time it takes more time to run. The next times you run, it's usually quicker than the before. So should have. Kate, do you have anything to add in the topics I discussed now?
Well, I just want to add that we highly recommend you to reuse the existing reusable components that we provide in the front-end sources folder, because they have been extensively tested and they provide like the functionality that is widely used all across Acumatica. So if you use them, you will save time first, and save time and effort. And secondly, the Acumatica screens that you create or that you modify will have the same look and feel that the existing Acumatica screens. So the users will have the same experience. And I think on the other slide, we will be able to see the locations of the most of the reusable components.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, yeah, we'll discuss that shortly. Okay, now as we can see, like the test cap, the field that we created is already here, right? So let's do some more. Let's see how we can add this to the shipment screen. For the shipment screen, I already have created an extension. So there is a good option that you can use in the Visual Studio, especially for these extensions. You can include them or exclude them from a project. So I've excluded them for the test purpose. So I'm including them back so I can reuse them. It is exactly the same like how I'm doing. I'm modifying the first column of the shipment. And in the TypeScript extension, I have included I'm exposing the field to the front end. So let me just copy the path from here and use the same path here. And let me do a small change just to show how it can affect. Let's say if I want to name the caption to be additional ref number. So now if we want to build, let me build both the screens together. So as you can see, I'm building sales order and shipments screen both together. So let's wait for the build process to complete. So far, the build is not completed, so we are not seeing the new field here. So say, for example, if you want to place this field on a different column, you can use this ID of the different column to target it and place it under the different column. Instead of column A, you can do it on column B. So these are a few things that you can play around. So now let's see what happens to the shipment screen. As you can see, the shipment screen, the new field has been added, and the name of the caption is also changed in every place. So this is one main advantage of using the templates. So which makes it easier for us to maintain the change consistent throughout the different screens and everything. Okay, so now we did a quick demo. Let's check like let's discuss about the few like issues or tricks to troubleshoot the issues. For caching issue, usually you can do an you can restart the instance or reset the cache of the instance. If that doesn't help, then you can start by restarting the IIS. And if that doesn't still work, you can do something. You can go to the inspect of the browser. And in the network tab, you can disable the cache and see if that helps. These are the few troubleshooting steps you can do. And one another thing is if you make any change in extension and if you don't see it in the, say, for example, if I make any change in the extension here for the shipment and I don't see it in the front end and you're not sure if your code is right or wrong, you can make change in the HTML directly, but it is not recommended. You cannot have your changes directly in the file. It is always recommended to have an extension and make all your changes from the extension. You can do changes here just for testing purpose, see whether your code is right, whether the change is rendering in the source file. Then you can move it to extension and test it from there. Those are a few tips that you can check. And the other option is to utilize the browser tools. For example, if you want to check what are the files that are loaded or how these fields are loaded when you render the screen, you can go to the network tab and you can do enter. And as you can see, the browser captures all the files that are being loaded in here. And you can do and search. For example, if you want to search for user, I'm searching for the field. I'm searching using the field name that I just created. As you can see from here in the browser, you can see all the different TypeScript properties and the UI properties that we have set for these fields. And this comes in handy when you want to troubleshoot and see whether the field made it to the front end or not. That's something that's very useful. And you can also ask, for example, if this issue is reproducible only for the user and it's not reproducible on your end, you can ask the users to get a HAR capture. They can reproduce the issue and export it. You can import it to and analyze and see like what's going on, if there is anything that's wrong that you can fix. Right. Okay, these are the few things I wanted to discuss. And one last point is I want to discuss about the other templates that are available.
Sorry, Vignesh, could you switch to the previous slide? I just wanted to make a few additions. So how do you understand that something went wrong? So for example, after you build the code, you see that just an empty screen, white screen without any controls, anything that you have like defined in the screen. This issue is usually fixed by restarting the instance or clearing cache. So yeah, don't worry if you see just an empty white screen, the frame that contains the form itself, restart the cache and usually it helps. And another thing that like helps a lot, again, the developer tools and looking through the output there. And another thing that keep in mind is that if you have any errors in HTML, they will be ignored. So you won't be able to. So in case you open the screen and you don't see the changes that you've made in HTML, probably there are some errors in it. And just like when the code is compiled, any errors in HTML are ignored. And you need to like look through the code very attentively, manually, and find the error. And the same goes for a lot of things in TypeScript as well. So it ignores any mistakes. For example, if you type something after semicolon and like any extra code, it will be just ignored. So yeah, keep in mind that even if the code has been built successfully, and the form opens, it doesn't mean that all the changes have been applied properly. So yeah, I just wanted to add this. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Okay, so one quick example where you can find these extensions usually. So as Varthini said, screen specific extensions are available here, and the common extensions, for example, address forms, contact forms are available under the common folder under the screens. So for example, if you want to see how this form is used, you can do a search for form-address.html, and you can search only the HTML files because that's what we are looking for. And you can see the list of forms that are using this specific template. Okay, let's take the sales order here, for example. You can see how they are using it. So let's open this first. And as you can see, this template itself is quite huge, and not huge, it's big enough. So this is something that how big you can build a template to do to build anything that helps it to be more maintainable and easy. Okay, and as you can see, they're using different number of parameters, and these parameters are being used in the different fields to define it and make them work. And in the HTML and in the sales order screen, you can see they are passing the parameters using the QP include tag, and it's being rendered as required. So there are multiple examples available here, which you can see as a reference and learn from it. And yeah, I think that's it from me. I'll hand over to Kate.
Thank you, Vignesh. So I just wanted to show a little bit which kind of help resources we have regarding modern UI and where you can find all the information that we have covered today. So let me share my screen as well. So yes, again, these are some of the components, reusable components that we have. And here's the help portal. So again, since modern UI is very complex and it provides so many new capabilities, there is it's hard to start right away. So we have prepared a lot of different guides for you. So if you go to the help.acumatica.com, at the end of the page of our help portal, you can find the UI developer section. And here we provide 3 guides. So the first guide, UI development, provides general information on different scenarios regarding modern UI, such as how to build source code, how to create customizations, how to troubleshoot, how to create reusable components, and how to define different types of forms. And one of the most, I would say, important chapters is how to manipulate the layout. So which kind of presets we have and what CSS classes we provide for the modern UI and in which cases you need to use them. We have also extensive recommendations from our UX designer on how to use different CSS classes and presets and types of layouts in order to make the form more beautiful and user-friendly. We have different templates. This is a new thing. So Varthini was talking about field sets, as you remember. A field set is a new thing that we introduce in the modern UI, which is basically a container of fields, and you can organize those field sets in different ways using the templates. So here are the different types of templates that we have, and you can see the description of those in our help. So this is the UI development guide. Another thing that we have is the UI components guide, which provides an extensive information on different types of controls that we have created for modern UI. Some of the controls are new, some of the controls have the same behavior as in the classic UI, and some of the controls have been reworked. For example, you might notice that the selector looks a little bit different, or the tree might look a little different. So again, you can find a lot of information here. So again, field sets, for example, you can see how to work with those and how to configure those. And each of the controls in the modern UI obviously is implemented by a class, and you can see the reference for this class and all of the properties of the control in another of our guides. So let's say I want to see some more information on the field set in the API reference. So I go to our API reference, and here is the reference for all the properties for the QP field set control, which is basically the control that you use to define field sets. For example, we can specify the caption, the size of the controls, whether the labels should be visible, and how to bind a view, and so on. And you can, so for example, let's say I have a selector and I want to configure a selector. I go here to the QP selector topic. Here is information about our selectors, and in order to find the set of properties that you use to define selectors, you go to config property, and here you see the interface eSelector control config. You go there, and here are all the properties that you can use to configure selectors. Obviously, most of the properties you configure in the DAC fields using attributes, but if you need to override any of those properties, or if they are not available in the DAC attribute in backend, you use the properties in the front end for the control, for the specific control here. So again, this is the API reference we have, which is also available in our help portal here at the end. So I think that's all I can say about our help. Oh, again, we have the T290 course regarding modern UI, which is available on our Open University. Currently, it's available for 2024 R2, so we will be updating it in a couple of weeks. It will be available for 2025 R1. And if you are starting to work with the modern UI, I strongly recommend that you go through this course. It will take about 1.5 to 2 days, but it will cover most of the scenarios like customizations and creating new screens and extending screens and working with the layout, working with the screen classes, view classes, decorators, and so on. So yeah, that's it. I think we're finished with the presentation. So should we proceed with the Q&A?
Yeah, thank you. I'll just go through a couple that I see here. Number one, will mobile app customizations be affected by modern UI?
Oh, that's a very good question. So all the stuff that you're doing in the modern UI is not available in the mobile application. So they're working through different protocols. And if you're like the mobile app will stay the same. No matter what you do in modern UI. And if you're defining any kind of logic, for example, using event handlers, it won't be available in the mobile application. So keep that in mind. And overall, so the backend stays always the same. So the mobile mapping will take only that stuff that is done in backend.
Gotcha. Okay. And here's another one. Can the initial deployment be done with the modern UI for new customers, or can it only be done for existing customers? Like, could you roll out the modern UI for brand new customers starting, tomorrow?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
I think it's starting 25 R2. It's recommended for the commercial use, so I think it should be good.
Sweet. Okay. Here, let me see what else we have here. Here's a more technical one. Is there any plan to provide a process where we want to include external NPM libraries? For example, integrations to third-party services at a JavaScript level.
Vyacheslav, do you have any answer to that?
We do not know such plans.
Hey, that works. Give me a second here. Just going through the ones because I know some of them have been answered as you guys have been presenting. Oh, here's a simple one that sounds simple at the beginning, but could be a little bit more complicated. Why are there no user-defined fields on transactions?
So in the modern UI, user-defined field, we no longer have the separate tab for user-defined fields. So when you migrate the screen from classic UI to modern UI, you'll like the fields themselves will be migrated automatically, but you'll need to specify their location manually. So you will have to find some space on the existing screen. For example, like on the field set somewhere, on the tab somewhere, you'll need to specify the location manually. So yeah, we no longer have those tabs. The user-defined fields will be mixed up with the regular fields.
Gotcha. Okay. And here's another one. Does modern UI impact import scenarios at all?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It should
Vyacheslav?
not.
Yeah,
It should not. In that sense.
Just one thing to keep in mind that you have seen the view info decorator when you're initializing a view in the view class. In the screen class, you can specify the view info decorator. So the container name that you specify in the view info decorator is the container name that you will be later be able to see in the import export scenarios. So that's just one small thing that we can see in the import export scenarios.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm just giving a few more seconds for other questions to pop in here. Oh, here's a great one in terms of building new screens. This person says, we're currently utilizing 2024 R1 and will upgrade to 2025 R1 in the fall. Would you suggest that we start learning to build new screens from scratch utilizing the modern UI, or should we learn to use the customization tools within 2024 R1 and then later convert to modern UI? Which would you recommend?
Varthini, do you want to say something?
No, sorry, I was on mute, but yeah, I at least personally for me, I would recommend going with the modern UI way. It's a big learning curve for classic UI and then another one for modern UI. So,
and also considering that we will be deprecating classic UI in 1 year, it's like it makes much more sense to start developing screens in the modern UI right away.
Gotcha. To my knowledge, I think a lot of these questions have been answered, I think, by Varthini or Vignesh. I'm just going to give one more minute. Oh, here's one. Can we disable the warning message pop-up when switching to modern UI?
So since modern UI is in production, is not in full production use right now, we display this notification. But as far as I know, when modern UI goes in full production, the pop-up will no longer be necessary. So no, right now you cannot disable it.
Fantastic. And what version is that for the pop-up going away? Just for the audiences.
So the modern UI will be officially in production use since 2025 R2.
Okay.
So I think they will be removing the notification then.
Fantastic. I think that is all the time that we have today. Again, I want to thank all of our presenters for showing up, talking about the modern UI, Varthini, Vignesh, Kate, and let me see if I butcher this, Vyacheslav. All right, very nice. As I mentioned before, this is recorded. It will be edited and shared on the community page for people to rewatch and kind of follow along. If you'd like to leave feedback about this webinar, I'll post a quick link in the chat. We are working with our marketing department to potentially get some swag to a lucky winner. So definitely leave some feedback if you have any. But again, thank you so much to our presenters and our moderators. And hopefully you have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
thank you.